Tachtas is divided into two shurim. The first half and the second half. Now, I told you already that the Alter Rebbe devotes 3 or 4, depending on how you want to look at it, prakim to the nefesh and to the neshama. Right? Perek Beis speaks about Etzem HaNefesh. We learned this the other day. And he speaks basically 2 in Yom about the Etzem HaNefesh. First of all, that it's Chelek HaMal Mamish. Second of all, that's Yisrael Alav Machshava. And the whole Arichas of the Perek is that even though there's different types of neshamas, there's higher neshamas and lower neshamas, greater neshamas and lesser neshamas. What's unique about neshamas is that they're still connected to their source. And I explained to you that one of the advantages is this idea of iskalalus. We're not just a bunch of essences. We're all connected. Yeah. Perek Gimel speaks about the koiches hanefesh, the middle of the neshama. Perek Daled is going to speak about the periphery of the neshama, the outside of the neshama, which is called the levush hanefesh. But today we're talking about the koiches hanefesh. Koiches means the tools and the strength of the neshama. Hashem gave the neshama tools and strength with which the neshama does 2 things. It takes in information. With which the neshama processes information and processes the communication of information. The actual taking in and giving out has to do with the levushim, with machshava dibur ma'aseh. But what the neshama does with what it takes in, and what the neshama, how the neshama prepares for what's going to give out, this is the koiches. And basically there's 2 koiches, the brain and the heart. Basically there's 2. The brain's function is to acquire information that's true. The heart's function is to make information relevant to me personally, to get excited about it. So let's start with the brain. V'hinei, Perek Gimel. V'hinei, kol bechinas u'madrega, every one of the measures and steps, mishalish elef, these 3, nefesh, ruach, and neshama, all 3 nefesh, ruach, and neshama of the nefesh halakis, klula meyas, it has 10. In other words, you have really 30 koichas of nefesh halakis. You have chabad chagas nehim of neshama, chabad chagas nehim of ruach, chabad chagas nehim of nefesh, which is consistent, Shnei Zalman, with Ibu Yinika Maichet that we were learning about. Nefesh, ruach, and neshama in a way is Ibu Yinika Maichet. Each one has a complete 10. It's klula meyasa bechinas, it's 10 bechinas, which is connected as a sfiras al yenis. Why do we have 10 koiches? Because there's 10 sfiras in Atzilus. Shenishtal shalu mehen, our 10 faculties come from, they're a chain reaction from the 10 spheres of Atzilus. Why? The Torah says a man is created in the image of God. Why do we say that that a human being is a mashal for Getlachkeit? Because we come from Getlachkeit. Our model comes from Getlachkeit model, and therefore we're a good analog for Getlachkeit, good mashal for Getlachkeit. And the Chalakis L'Shtayim was divided into 2. Shein Shalish Oymes is 3 mothers, 3 roots. V'sheva Kvulos and 7 double Midas, Pirush. This means Chacham Bina Vadas, the 3 faculties of Chacham Bina Vadas, which are the source of the Midas, which are the Seichel. V'shivas Yemei Abinyan, the 7 days with which the Eibush created the world. The 7 Midas, which I'm sure you know what it says in Chassidus. It doesn't say B'Sheishes Yom, it says Sheishes Yom Masa D'Shem. The teaches that the Eibush made the world with the 6 Midas, which are Chesed, Gevura, Teferes, V'chol. V'kach B'nefesh, the same is true in the human soul. Shenechalakis L'Shtayim, there's 2 parts. Seichel is the intellectual part, which is the way the person's brain goes out of himself to acquire truth. Umidus, and the emotional part, which is the way a person takes the truth which he has found and personalizes it, and he specifies. The wisdom, the intelligence includes 3 tools. Listen to my interpretation, okay? The creative tool, the processing tool, and the personalizing tool. What do you think for that? Chochmah is the mechadish, the inventor. Bina is the tester, the one who makes sure that everything works. And Chochmah Bala Nisayan, and that's the one that makes it real. The hamidus and the human emotions, which are lechatchila about feeling things. Hein avad Hashem, the love of God. The fachte v'yirasei, fearing and respecting the Eibishter. Pachad is in the lev, yid is more in the meach. Ulafare, and to beautify the Eibishter v'chuli and so forth. You should know that in Tanya Perek Tes, the midah of Teferes is simcha, the joy of his taklas b'yikara de malga. Here he calls it lafare. The Chabad nikru emes, and the Chacham bin Adas are called mothers, umakal amidas, and the root for the human emotions. Ki hamides hein tel des Chabad, where we get excited in our emotion, they're offspring of Chacham bin Adas. I just want to tell you one thing. There's shalish emes, sheva kfulis, and yud beis pshutas. It says in Sefer Yetzirah. There's 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet. 3 mothers, root letters, which are emesh, aver ma emesh, aleph mem shin. Here it's Chabad. Sheva Kfulis, the 7 double letters, Beged Kefres, Beis Gimel Dal, Chof Pei Reish stuff, they all have a Dagesh and a Rafa with the dat and that. And the other 12 letters are called Pshutes. And there's a connection between the 3 Oisias Emesh and Chabad, between the Sheva Kfulis and Chagas Nehim, and the Yud Beis Pshutes is what we call the Yud Beis Gevul Alachsen, which is Chitenius of the Midas. This is, in other words, the Chav Beis Oisias are also connected to each world. I'm just mentioning because this Lashon Emes and Kfulis comes from Sefer Yetzirah. So we're talking about the Koyches HaNefesh, and we said that the Koyches HaNefesh and Ishtal Shalom Mehem, and the Koyches HaNefesh have these 2 categories of Seichel and Midas. Let's talk about Seichel first. Kihine. HaSeichel Shebenefesh HaMaskelas. The wisdom which comes from the Nefesh, which is masculine. Now I want you to know that there's a Maimed in Ayin Beis, a page in Ayin Beis, where the Rebbe Rashab explains that the Etzam HaNefesh is called Maskelas, not just the intellectual soul. He doesn't say Nefesh HaSichlis, it's Nefesh HaMaskelas. For reasons of Pnimius Abba, Pnimius Hatik, it's a long Kabbalah. Bottom line is, there is a connection between Etzam HaNefesh and Seichel, Shu HaMaskil Kodava, which creates everything. I like to call Chochmah the intuitive soul, or the creative soul. The intuitive soul, the one that has a feeling for new ideas. That's what Chochmah is, new flashes. Shu HaMaskil, which invents Kodava every idea. Nikir B'Shem Chochmah Ke'echmah. It's called the power Chochmah, which means the power of Bittul. Why? Why? I'll tell you very simple why. There's 2 parts to Chochmah. There's the flash, there's the invention, there's the intuitive creation, right? And there's the preparation. How do you create a flash? How do you get a new idea? Be frustrated, be upset, be humbled, be upset that you don't understand, feel bad that you don't know, right? That upsetness, that brokenness breaks your preconceptions. It breaks the ways you used to learn until then, correct? And the breaking of the preconceptions opens you up to a message from your subconscious. Your neshama knows everything. You don't. And your ego doesn't let your neshama speak to you. So when you break down your ego, you open yourself up to a suggestion for your subconscious, and that's the flash. So really, what you're doing in Chochmah is breaking your ego. Bittul. The reward for Chochmah is the flash. So maskil al kol dava, this is the secondary component of Chochmah. The insight into the new enlightenment that comes to the person. The koyach ma, the bittul, this is what you do to make it possible for your consciousness to hear what your subconscious is saying. You understand what your koyach maskil is saying. Now, that's chokhmah. And it gives you a flash. But the flash has a lot of insight, a lot of depth, a lot of wisdom, but to you it's just a light. And it's a waste of time because it's going to pass in 2 seconds flat, unless when you bring out that possibility, the possibility of the flash to actualization. How? Hashem gave you a flash, almost b'matana, and you analyze it. You analyze it, you think about it in your wisdom and your mind, to understand something properly and deeply. From any insight or flash or original idea, hamuskal, which was created b'sichli in one's creative power. Nikra bina, at that point it's called bina. So bina takes the flash, it cannot take the whole flash, there's too much in the flash. One tiny piece of inspiration from the flash, bina analyzes. Sometimes bina will discover that flash quality is cliche, it's chitzonius. You think about it, it becomes junk, you throw it out. Sometimes you'll think about the enlightenment and you'll realize that there's much more pnimius, much more depth, and you can keep studying it and find out real intellectual truth. That process is called what I call the thorough process, the process of breaking it down, and this is bina. V'hein heim, and these 2 faculties together are ava eim, are a father and a mother. The father would be chokhmah, the flash, the enlightenment, and bina would be the thorough process. Hamadidus, which give birth to Avos Hashem v'yirasov, love of God, awe of God, and fear of God.
So this ends the current shiur.